Barbarian 2011. Conan the Barbarian is a 2011 sword and sorcery film based on the character the Conan Barbarian, created by Robert E. Howard. The film is a new interpretation of the Conan mythology and a remark to the 1982 original film featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger. It stars Jason Momoa as the little role alongside the Rachel Nichols and Rose McGowan, Stephen Lang, Ron Perlman, and the Bomb Sam with the Marcus Nispel directing. The film had spent 7 years in the development and Warner Bros. Before the rights were shifted to NU Images film in the 2007 with a clause wishing for the immediate start on production. Lionsgate and the Sony Picture entered negotiations for the distribution with the film saying many directors permanently British writer before setting a Nispel in 2009 and the subsequently bringing together a cast and crew. Filming began on the March 15, 2010 and the conclusion on the June 5, 2010. The film was first released on August 17 and 2011 in 4 countries. Franchise Belgium, Iceland, and the Philippines. It was released in North America on August 19 and received largely navigation reviews. Plot: Conan is the son of the Corin, chief of a barbarian tribe. The youth Howard is a skilled and but violent warrior who his father believes is not ready to wield his own sword. One day, their village is attacked by the forces of Khalar Zym, a warlord who wishes to renew the pieces of the marks the Anchors and in order to revive his dead wife and conquer Hyboria. Thousands of years ago, the marks crafted by a group of scholars and used to subjugate the world the broken into many pieces which were scattered among the barbarian tribes. After locating Corn's piece of the marks and the murdering the entire village, James leaves. Conan is the only survivor and swears revenge. Years later, Conan has become a pirate but still seeks revenge. He encounters a slave's colony and the phrase it killing of all the slaves handles in the process. In the city of Messentia, he encountered Alashan, a thief being chased by a man whom Conan recognizes as Lucius Stavandunol, one of the Sam's soldiers for the year before. He allows himself to be the captor alongside Alashan. Conan escapes imprisonment and the kill several of the guards and comfort Lucius, forcing him to reveal the Zymes seeks the pure blood decanted of the screen and the anchor sacrificing and decanted with only the mark's power. Conan helped the rest of the prisoners of escape and in gratitude, Alashan tells the Conan that if he never need him, Conan will find him at the city of Thebes. Aurangzeb Lucius is then killed by the prisoners. Zyme and his daughter, the sorceress Marique, Rose Amsigon, attack a monastery with they hope to find the pure blood decanted, saying something is worrying. Professor Red Ravi, and elderly mold, tells of his students Tamara, Rachel Nichols to run away and return to birthplace. When Professor refuses to reveal his knowledge of the decanted, Zyme kills him. Marky also slays several of the Precious. Tamara carriage is chased by Zyme's men, but the cornered wretch and the kill three of her purchases and also captures one of Zyme's men, Romo, and after forcing him to reveal Tamara importance and the pure blood, Conan captures and Ramo into the Zyme's nearby camp, killing him. Zyme and Marky confront Conan, who pretend to be interested in the exchanging Tamara for gold. Conan attacks Zyme, but Marky save her father by invoking soldiers and made Hope stand and then position Cannon with a Persian Iceland bringing for Tamara rescues him and they return to Cannon's ship. Stationed nearby where the friend Arthos helps Conan recover, the boat is attacked by Zam's men and although they kill several of Cannon's men, they are defeated. Conan ordered to Arthas return the messenger with the Tamara and depart to confront Zam in his kingdom. Arthas tells Tamara that Cannon left a map behind and she follow him, meeting him with Isaac in a cave where they make love. The next day, as she returning to the boat, Zam's man and daughter capture him. Connor learns of Tamara capture and departs to Arglon, where he asks Alan Shine to the him break into the Zam's castle. Unnoticed, Zam prepared to drain Tamara blood, mending the marks after confronting a octopus like a monster that the guards, the dangers, and the killing its four handles cannon inflators. Zam's followers kill a guard and steals his robe and watches watches as James puts on the empowered mask. Cannon lasers Tamara at the scabs as the battle jams with the castle falling around them. Marky attacks Tamara, but Cannon hears Tamara's screams and the defeat Marky cutting off her hand. Tamara kicks her into a pit where she impales on a large spike. James comes and finding his daughter's corpse, the swears revenge upon Conan. Conan and Tamara becomes trapped on the unstable bridge as James attack them. He uses his mask's power to call forth the spirits of the dead five, Malivia and a powerful resources who was executed by the monks and from the Tamara monastery for attempting the unleash outlets and forces to destroy Hyboria, and the malicious spirit begins to possess Tamara. She begs Conan to let her fall, but they refuses. Instead, stabs the bridge before the jumping to safety with Tamara. The bridge capsules and taking James along the power-hungry rule falls to the lava before the immense precipice, screening the name of his wife, implying his damage. Conan and Tamara escape and return to her the birthplace, telling her they will meet again. He returned to Corvus village, tells the memory of his father that he was avenged and death recovered the sword Marquis stole from him, restoring his honor. Cast Jason Momoa as a Conan, Leo Howard a young canon, Richard Nichols as a Tamara, a beautiful and storious novation, and the monster who is the actually of a bloodline of a Archunarian Macros, and the Stephen Lang as a Khalar Zym's Earthless and Empire building Walden's Zym seeks a nature's power over life and death to restore his wife to Maliva, who was burned for her evil. The character was originally going to be called Khalar Singh. Rose Amsigon as Mark, a Khalar Zym's daughter and a powerful witch. She is presumed to have inherited her powers from her mother Malavia. Lavina Stavina, a young Mark, but Sob and a Yukafa and the leader of a Kushris, tampered from the Svanchons of Scotch and the Kharzams lieutenant, and the Stavan O'Donnell as Lucius, the leader of the Kharzams Lugon, the Acculation Markans, and the Lucas is the disfigured by the Conan during the renascing of the seminar village. He became the warlord of a person, and soon after Dana Lubunra as a Charana blind archer who leads a similar band of blind archers in Khalar Zymes and the Marine army. Ron Parliament as a Corning, a blacksmith, and the leader of Sanamics and the Conan father. Nonso Anisas and the artist as a Marin pirate and the friend of Conan. Sad Malugu as a Ali Shine and Thaphois pay his debt to Conan by the helping him motion Walsh and the mom, a mysterious worried of dark magic. Reed Ravi as a Faster as elder monk leader of the monastery charged with the care of Tamara. Anton Trentfold as the excluded Aston Torres as a sacrifice victim, Daniel Raffish as Alexis Paris, Merchant Fearsome as a nurse, and Gilsa Merchant as Malvi. Production development. There had been take in the late 1990s of a second canon sequel following Conan the Destroyer about the older Conan set to the killed and killing canon Crown of Iron. However, due to annulled and the Swiss election in 2003 is the governor of the California, this project came and end. Warner Bros. Spent around 7 years trying to get the project off the ground with development attempted made by the Larry and Andy Wakshan, Josan Mealy and the Robert Bredrins, who was the closer to completing development but left the project over Grindhouse, Bose Yokin and Hard in 2006 to start again. However, in the June 2007, the right rewarded to Paradox Entertainment through all the draft made under the Warner remained with them. Paradox COE and Frederick Melberg told Variety, "We have to great respect for Warner Bros. But after 7 years, we came to the point where we needed to see the progress to production. Paradox would acquisition the right after the various groups took interest in producing, including New Line, Cinema Hollywood Gang, and the Millennium Films. Due to the development time frustration felt when the rights with the Warner Melvins and made deal terms, we has to asking $1 million for a 1 year option with another $1 million option for each year revenue. In August 2007, it was announced that Millennium and accord to the right to the project in under 7 figures and deal with with the Melbrink and Minimium and Lawrence Brost, David Gogota and the George Forrest to produce the deal was the Brock of Gata, who originally made the deal between the Paradox and Ward in 2002. Production was aimed for a spring 2006 start with the intention of the having stories more faithful to be Robert E. Howard creation. After the partnership on the Rombo New Image films, Millennium and alongside and partnered on the film due to the strength of that relationship and the happiness by Millennium Progees with the handing of Robo Longets and were announced to be handing North America distribution in January 2008. At this point, Thomas and Dean Donnelly and the Joshua Opinions and had been courted to write the script. New Image Millennium founders Leonard and Danny Damp with set of the full finance the film at the estimated $100 million with a brief effort of the developing Red Sonja with Rose Amsigon as the lead. Robert Badrich had the mention in July 2008 he had been in the discussion to produce Conan. Also, Derek Blackman and the Howard MC Chain with the announcement in August to have been hired for a rewrite of the script with the intention of the returning the original resource material and in the desire of making and retread the film. In November 2008, Brett Ratner with a prematurely announced to be the director of Canon to the Hollywood Report by the learner, something which is displays him as the potent out. I am not doing Conan now. This is a totally permanent of wood now. Conan is only development deal. I have a deal at a Paramount and I am doing Bravely Hills com first to the matter what. Abby should not telling him you animals as in the press that I am doing. However, Gator revealed in May 2009 that the after 6 months of discussions and development on film rather was of the project due to the busy schedule and regardless Gata and hopeful of still meeting in intention of the millennium of the start film on August 24 in Bulgaria with the 2009 revealed Marcus Nispel who take the reins as a director to the film Scan Hood and announced in February 2010 to be the rewriting the script once more of the procedures. Early in the pre-production process, Conan with the temporary title for the film until it was changed to Conan 3D. Finally, early in the summer 2010, the title was identified changed to Conan in the Barbarian as by title the John Militias and 1982 films. Casting. In January 2010, Jason Momoa was selected for the role of Conan. Momoa beat Callan Tools and the role he was enrolled in intense 6-week training program at the Stunt and Martial Arts Academy in Los Angeles for the part where the still funneling and audition for the film. Momoa intended to add 10 pounds of the muscles to 215-pound frame with the help of the Born Ultimates and the stunt performance. David Leitch and the Marital Arts stunt coordinator for The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolution chest practice. There is a some speculation as the type of the exercises as well as the diet used by the Momo to achieve his 10-pound muscles again. Liu Howard has voiced as the younger Conan is the film as the first 15-minute and focused the Conan youth. The casting call of the canon father Korean reveals the character to be powerfully built, intelligent, graceful master, swordman, skilled blacksmith, and a facto leader of the cinemas. And the canon father he reveals the answer the terrible question of the drawing wife and the court's canon of her so he see him. He then should shoulders the burden of the raising Conan, which provides to donating him wise savage nature. Conan's teacher, he is the son, meaning of the sword, hot blood must be cooled and the temperate. With Carly finally corners him and tortures him to the death, shows to regard nor pain, hiding as the corners of his sons safely from the eyes of the enemy. First interest notifications originally talked happened before, but after a period of talk offers the return Rurik in February 2010. Roik and however left the project of a second time in the apartment favor of the immortal film. Ron Parliament took on the character in March 2010. Bombshop veterans and the Yokafa and the leader Catfish Tamlin from the Swanets of course Okafa is Khalar Zym's second in the March palaces, and the Zam's daughter Marique will one day the warlord, and he obeys the leader but plots to otherwise. And the daughter, he is a might warrior and unbeatable in battle until the meets Conan. Richard Nichols joined the cast as Tamara, described as the Queen's servant, Badget, and the best friend she had, and many other female bodyguards to be the Queen has been hiding most of their lives because of the curse and anger which would take the Queen's life to bring almost immortal power to its king. When the Khalar Zym, as a powerful warlord with the ambition of become the king of the ancient storms, the monsters, and the capture all the navigation land, she is separated from Ilora. She was one must the protect with all of her strength and will. Tamara is determined to find and rescue her. She finds herself in league with the Conan because of his mutual need to Khalar Zym. She is not the least intimidated by the Conan size and the grim demeanor, and the alliance eventually blossom in something bad in the surprising ball. Stephen Lang plays Khalar Zym, described to commanding in size and manner, Walrus and a formidable warrior, brilliant and the withers, and by the many campaigns in his wake, and one he is driven in his quest to find the queen of the Anchor, and he has been building an empire to do so. Rose Amsicons would also start as an evil half-human, half-switch, and announces by Variety announcement on March 2010. She will play Mark and the daughter of the Khalar Zym, Stephen Lang, although the part was originally written as the male character called Farik Amsigon, impressed by the producer by her take of her role, so her character was the rewrite to the film. Amsigon attempted to the inject and the Electra complex for the character, noticing irritated by the obsession with the trying to Shagdas, her father was not scripted. It was something that the rewrite and I talked about the quite a bit, but uninspiredly the studio was freaked out by it. A lot of the dialogue that we come and with the sport that and to give it a definite completed feel, and he had to take. I just figured okay then I will just and it will make the uncomfortable as possible with any dialogue with and asked about the preparation to play which MC Gone started with her costume and the signification in her preparation, and that makeup for her character took 6 hours. Daphne Ladrens had been spoken to producer in November 2009 for an unspiced role. Filming was first hoped to be started in spring 2008. Nothing was get until rather come on the board. Filming had a set of date August 24, 2008 in Bulgaria return. However, the department in May that year and the started date of the filming was pushed back, with the South Africa being revealed at another filming destination. Filming finally began in the Bulgaria on the March 2010, wrapping on the June 15th. The Bulgarian shooting location on the Ljubljana Film Studios Blota. Popoti, Kamani, Bristisa, Sofia, and most of Prank and the Vutisha. The film had a 3D conversation in post-production releases. Conan the Barbarian was first released on August 17, 2011 in France, Belgium, Iceland, and the Philippines. It is released in Australia, Italy, and Israel on the August 18 in the United States, Canada, and the Spain on the August 19. Its veteran on the August 21 in the United Kingdom on August 26, among others. As of the December 21st, 2011, the movie had a worldwide gross of $48.8 million. Critical reception as of August 30, 2011, the film has received generally navigations and reviews attending a 23% aggregate approval rating based on the 128 reviews on the review aggregate website Rotten Tomatoes. The website provided a consequence that while it relevant gory violence and more faithful to the Robert E. Howard books, Conan the Barbarian Frog's three-dimensional character dialogue and the acting favor of the unnecessary 3D effects, the film also receiving a source. A score of 36 out of 100 from the review aggregate Metacritic, which indicate generally unfavorable reviews based on 29 reviews. CinemaScore polls reported that the average grade moviegoers gave the film was a B on A plus 2 F scale. However, not all reviews were negative. Betsy Sharkey of the Los Angeles Times wrote that it was with a certain amount of guilt that I say it's kind of a waked blast to watch. Scott Webbrink of the switchfilm.com stated with the action scenes and the tigers and more chases with the other, but there is little dialogue and the successful canon movie like a short tosses a lot of hardcore lunacy as a screen and shows a decent amount of the respect of the basic mat and action fairs, also criticizing the stock character and the written script variety magazine also gave a midi positive review static with all understands Nispel embrace and property classic roots placing another canon squirrel within the tradition of sword and sorcery picks future. In late 2011, it was the mistakenly reported that the Jason Momoa was opening a sequel Conan in interview with the producer Avi Lerner and claimed that the remark of Red Sonja and would be before the follow up to the 2011 film in October 2012. Universal Picture and the Paradox Entertainment announcement that the next Conan production would not be a sequel to the Nispel film and would instead of the remark to in 1982 film. The Legend of the Conan is initially and started for a summer 2014 release and will be produced by Frederick Melbourne with a story by the first and the 4 years later Charis Morgan. Sequences will also again appear in the tutorial role. Jason Momoa's The Canyon Barbarian remark score streaming success. Jason Momoa's critically panned remark of the Arnold Schwarzenegger's classic action movie Conan the Barbarian. He has so become a free streaming success. The movie stars Momoa as the tutorial Conan, who is on a quest for revenge after the village was massacred when he has a child, leaving him as the only survivor. It currently holds a 25% on Rotten Tomatoes. The film is far from the Momoa's best movie both because of its critical reception and due to its commercial failure. The movie grossed $63.5 million at the global box office, again a $90 million budget. Despite this, it did become award nominated, earning a nod and the Stern awarded for the best makeup despite its other failure. Now interest in the Conan the Barbarian has paired on the streaming almost 15 years after the theatrical release, according to Tubi. Movie is currently going on a viral free streaming platform, becoming a massive success with their audience. Even though the film was not able to snatch the audience it needed in theater, it been be released thanks to streaming. Momoa's Canon by the Barbarian is a remark of one of the such transition movie from the 1982, the original, the same name as what earned the actor and the bodybuilder global fame, becoming a massive success despite earning mixed review from the critics. It resulted in a sequel Conan Destroyed in the 1984, which was not as successful as the first installment. Although the movie was a critical and commercial failure, its interesting climb to be the top on the Toby shows there's plenty of investment in the film. This may particularly because of how recognizable Momoa has become in the years following its release. His notable roles since include Aquaman and the now defunct and the DCEOU and Baba was in the Apple TV series. His most recent roles include the comedic guard and the garbage man Gorshin on the cast of an Minecraft movie as a canon in the critical acclaimed Chef of War and the Fly TV miniseries. He also created and co-wrote his next role include Lobo in the Supergirl movie and the returning as Duncan Adult for the Dawn part track. As the interest in the Conan Barbarian, the movie draws provide a global deal of a popcorn action, a good deal of a popcorn action and sequence of the moment to flex the both his geographical and the muscles with the alongside how many more roles he had since Clearfairs and the film managed to become lived again. It also signifies that even with proof critical and the reception, audience will have to still found value in the film. Review Conan the Barbarian 2011, directed by Marcus Nispel, category Fantasy. When I began seeing the promotional material of this reboot of Canon, I was immediately turned off first and foremost by the casting of the Jason Momoa as the tutorial Canon. Being the age that I am grew up on the Arnold Canon films and to see someone who is a character and the size of the Arnold up to their portraying Canon just did not do it for me. And I was not a Game of Thrones fan, so I had never even seen anything with him in it. All I saw in the trailer was a much smaller man wearing a skirt, grasping endlessly and looking nothing like Canon should look like. So I skipped this one as I had no desire to see it. But when it's hard to find films to watch with your 12-year-old son, the film begins make you watch these films too, otherwise would have the avoided. I keep going back and forth with my feelings on the Canon canon first and foremost as a words and the sounds fantasy film. It's really fun. There are a lot of technical aspects in Conan that rock. For starts, the CGI is kept and to minimum, yes, and when it is employed with the expectation of the final act, it's actually not that bad and the integrated will within the practical effect, and that's kind of a big deal in my world, especially when you consider that most of these films are ALL bad CGI quickly job. It was so noticeable throughout the film that they really tried to much as possible to use practical sets and effects, that we were constantly commenting on that and that it was commendable. It's kind of a ritual these days, so codes and the production of trying their hardest to keep it real. I also liked how boldly and the violent it was, where the easily could have to go on the PG route like Conan the Destroyer did, thus killing the franchise they went off a hard R and not watering and down to the film more theater sets. I was surprised at the so much blood was spilled in this, with a lot of it so over the top that it was almost funny at times. I liked that fact it was the actual blood packets being exploded and not bad CGI blood, but it was a little ridiculous. I mean, what's the point of the wearing all that and armor of it just takes the sweeps of a sword and the yours that regardless of all that armor. Now on to the negative, and the Jason Momo is an canon. I am sorry, but it is just such a wrong fit. But even look passing the castle choice, and the film just looks and feel like another episode of pretty much any fantasy show on TV, which is one of its biggest problem. Marcus Nispel is a fine director, but this film should have looked and felt more epic. On the plus side, he strayed away from this unusual handheld and camera technical and took more of a streamlined climatic approach, but it is sort of a false that the visual, when you look back at the first canon film directed by John Williams, it screams big and epic at every turn. Everything from the casting of the Schwarzeneggers to the Lost Woodscrants and the cinematographed on the ornical look and feels using 35 film, it all makes a huge difference. And what the original canon, the Barbarian episode, and the use to full advantage the new canon film is sorely missing. It may just be that we are in the huge world and the Sanders fantasy boom right on with Game of Thrones and leading the pack, but if you are going to attempt something for the big screen, you need to make it bigger. Nispel is the director sure was a wrong choice. He spawned himself in the horror genre, but for some the strange reason has been the go-to guy. The remarks with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday and the 13, now these under his belt. There's nothing in these resumes they could have the suggested could handle a big property like this or a film as epic as the result speaker of itself. Bottom line is that one of the films big and it really needed to be. And not of all fallings of canon light directed bars and nips shoulders. There are a lot of reasons that keep this from being great bigger, like the scores of the intense. The original Conan film versus a thundering score by the boys, Plodish and what's become legendary. Sadly, I have never noticed a chasm stamps of the music here by the toy bats and anything that the resembles a theme in the journal. It's look kind of, and there are no fears of the inspiration. It literally brings nothing to be the table, nor does it add level of excitement to the same. When we take a look at the over photo fads and the poster, it yet another sad reminder of where the film industry in these days, where is as the original film we got a gorgeous and iconic hand-painted poster recommend on the old canon comic novel, and the gorgeous painting by Frank the Frista, keeping the tradition and theme of the larger than life character. The poster art and these books nothing more than a collection of the image from the movie wrong through a photographs program that dozen of filters applied, giving a made for TV quality that we have to come expect from every single other big budget spectral. Marvel is the most quality of this, but it is so when it is just become the norm to do it this way. Now I cannot and remember the last time I have seen an actual hand painted poster design for the new film. By the time Canon 2011 came out, it had been nearly 30 years since the original Barbarian classic. Anticipation was high to say the least, and you would have thought that the production and hell, even the studio, would have done everything in their power to give us the Canon film. We have been waiting nearly 3 decades for the sadly that is not that film, and it's safe to see that the consequence is that it did not meet our expectations and there is no plans of anymore. Too bad for Momo's thought. I read a few articles when this first came. It was the worst quite and saying when he had to hold the streets of film already planned in his head. If they became the successfully personality, I enjoy it. If you can disable this is the name Conan, and it is actually a fun and well-made fantasy film with a tone of violence, bloodshed, and the impressive use of practical effect on its own outside of the canon, the Barbarian universe. It's quite enjoyable as a canon, remarked Robert, reimagining whatever it sadly plays in the comparison to film made 30 years ago without the benefit of CGI and bigger budget. Conan the Barbarian 2011 Blu-ray review. Directed Marcus Nispel, writer Thomas Dean Donnelly and Joshua Oppenheimer and the Saint Horde, starring Jason Momoa, Stephen Lang, Rachel Nichols, Rose McGowan, and Ron Parliament. I have been a lifelong fan of Robert E. Howard's canon stories. The first books I remember collecting were the Lancer books, versions added by Al Sparks by the camp and Loin in Carter. Whenever my family was traveling somewhere for a vacation, I kept my ass peeled for useful bookstores and begged my parents to stop and see if we could find any of the book I was missing. Yes, I have always been an obsessive collector, so me. Marvel's comic Conan the Barbarian was one of those comics that I some show how some tunes of the thought I don't remember even actually collecting them. And then in 1982, Arnold Schwarzenegger started in John Mase's film version, and I was love all over again. Sure, that was some acting and a couple of the questionable special effects, and the story was not that all true of the Howard original, but damn man. Conan the Barbarian is a great piece of work. The direction, the action sequences, and particularly the score by Basil Pladuris and the modernity effect in the scope. There is also the fantastic voiceover narration by Mako and the great William Smith playing Conan fathers, teaching a Conan about the riddle of steel. I still love that film and could watch it just about any time. We don't mention the sequel in this dojo. We also don't discuss the animated series of live action Conan the Adventure. Instead, we stick back and bask in the memories that first great film and pattern the summary are not returned to play King Conan and show everyone how it's supposed to be done. The film. Then last year, word got out there was a new Conan the Barbarian film began made with a sequel, but a robot of what we hope will spawn a new franchise. I was nervous. Quite frankly, other recent interpretation of the Robert E. Howard properties had not been all that glitter. Kevin's words and the call was Astros and the Jamas Profits as the Solomons cameras closed and the Calpest under a lot of CGI in the end. The choice of the director had been concerned as well. Marcus Nispel is a former music video director who had moved into the directing remarks of 80s horror classic. Sure, he directed Faith No the Moors, a small victory, but I had no interest whatsoever in checking out his version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Friday 13th. Although I have actually heard some good things about both, I also passed on this weakness and negative American film Pathfinder into growth as I was the premise. Casting Jason Momoa as a Conan was controversially at the time and was really all known the Batwatch Howley and the Strange Atlantic, but was sure in Game of Thrones as the baddest of all bad, and Khal Drogo. I was convinced that was the right man for the job. Stephen Lang is also pretty capable when it comes to playing scary Batman, and I barely recognize him from the promo short, so again that was comforting. And the only thing I knew about the writer was the two of them were recently announced as a working as a doctor. stamped for the Marvel. As it runs to writing the teams of Thomas Dan Donley and the Joshua Oppenheimer and the responsible of the pretty disappointing string of films including The Awful and Darling Dog and the Universal Real The Sound of Thunder. Oh, the third writer and the scene hold has been some interesting work though I was into the film with mixed expectation. I was not really expecting so much by the story but directed and just hope that these actors could make it entertaining and the kind of the afraid that it was going to be another low budget TV quality waste of time like Girl had been. As it turns out, there is some bad acting of the surprising resource and the story is bad. The genering as a sword and sorcery story good. But the direction is actually very good. The cinematography is beautiful, the set design is epic, the action sequences are very well done with a minimum of CGI and lot of real stunt work being done. The movie does not hold back in order to get the more profitable PG-13 rating either, instead going extra bloody and violent embracing its art. There are even some boys of there on the loud look and some cheap thrills. But the best part in the Momo and the large and the excellent the film ends being a little like Solomon can often shares. Warzone in the with a better story it could have to build on the perfect casting and being something great. Surprisingly, the worst for performance in the films comes from the usually reliable Ron Perlman as the current Cannon's father. There was something about his delivery that just bothered me. It was a little coastal, but to be fair, he was given the some pretty awful dialogue to work with, and I am sorry, but Cannon's father last words would not be have to love you, son. They had be something along a lines of kill off all the bad odds. Ron Parliament is on William's side. How they should have slipped Smith in there somewhere in a coma. Cana's grandfather or something. So ye Cana's wee village is dedicated on the Khalar Zym during the search of a magical head that allow him to rule the world of something like that in a very Lord of the Rings opening sequence narrated by Morgan Freeman of Fox, and we learn to this magical hat and how it was too dangerous so that the tribes it carpet and buried all around the world. Now Zym is collecting it avenge the murder of his witch life. Oh, and an witchy daughter played by the Rose McGowan for the some reason it's helping out. I had also liked to take his moment to say the Morgan Freeman is no Mako. The rest of the film is loads of fighting, drinking, fighting, loving, fighting, swimming, and fighting. There is really a lot of love if there is only some point to it all. I really don't understand why they did not actually adapt it and any of the Howard story, even the snippets of the bridge, the gap between the click between ports a point after the clutch point, and at the end Conan wins and drives off it into the sunset to visit his father's graves or something like that. This was a huge missed opportunity that could have been easily avoided by the simply hiring writers who actually wrote good script and did not more they pay lip service to loving Robert E. Howard's work. The Blu-ray disc. Conan the Barbarian is hitting the shelves in the two disc combo Blu-ray 3D Blu-ray DVD plus digital copy releases for only a few bucks and for the straight Blu-ray release, but the stand alone Blu-ray does not have the special feature. It's at the price to autography what you get visual. While I was not able to view this in 3D 2D in rather spectacular at time, the colors are vivid and the blacks are deep. There is a sense contrast and there is never time when it seems too dark was difficult to follow the action. The CGI what it is used blend fairly well until the get to monster battle at the 3/4 mark, but even that so no bad. You have to remember the big mechanical stack from the 82 version. The set are great and the landscape immense. There is a sense of the scale that really rises above expectation, and the Blu-ray format only then has that it is a damn fine looking film. The audio is also impressive. The losses of DTS HD Master Audio 7.1 mix allows through easy resolution and the from your silence to the heat of battle without the blowing out your speaker. This is the sort of the soundscape and the format is made for, and while the score is not all that the film sounds and good as you one expect. I have to keep this but the composer tear and bets on the basel uploader is there is a also features lengthy audio commentaries, one by director Marcel Nichols, the other by Momo and Rose McGowan, and there is also staging the fight, especially that shares the pre-visualization but the together by the stunt teams through Chinese visual why the fight sequences would look like. There is kind the kick ass and the highlights of the special feature are the three documentary works. Battle Royale enduring the action HD. This is a pretty entertaining look at the stunt work and the really does illustrate just how the old school the film is. Time there is a horse chase, some parkour action only slightly supplementary by the right words and the work is apparently being Momoa's rise and the safety precaution and some extremely impressive worded by Momo. Seriously, the man this work and learned how to this word yeah, the flashy time but demonstrated the fast and dangerous as well. I was very impressed with this aspect of the film and the behind the scene. The Conan legacy, this is a very nasty done at the character of the Conan from this beginning is Robert E. Howard. Pulp fiction at the beyond there is a look at the rebirth of the Conan in 6 days when the camp began releasing them. Although there is discussion of the camp controversial editing writing process and the discussion with the Roth Thomas about the translating the character in the Marvel comic property. Paul Thomas, the author of Canon, Farnham, and the producers, writer, actor, and director of the film, also talked the length about the everything from the Frank photos, the painting, the animated stories, and everything in between. The beyond there is short mention of the live action TV series, and then we back to the comic and Dark Horse recent Conan revival. The special feature made very happy. I recommend watching it before watching the film as it seems everything involved really correct about the staying true to Howard original canon story. Of course, none of these stories are the story of the film, and the writer also just shooted the points of the saying that our Lord you can sue and the Howard stories, but they were not the story of this film. Somebody deserves a slap in the mouth for the saying that out loud. Robert E. Howard, the man who would be canon. If you don't know anything about the Robert E. Howard, this short feature will give you some very nice insight and the man responsible for canon called Solomon Khan and the others. Howard's life short and very tragic, but this piece a good job of the balancing his depressing and finally days with the stories of writing and interacting with their pulp author of the day. Ultimately, this movie fails to break any new ground, offer anything you have not before seen. The clacks and the thick and the fast and turbines and everything that the director and performance tried to do, but what they said. Nichols has directed the fantastic looking film and the Jason Momoa and the Stephen Leung pour their hearts in their character. The extras and the nice informers and the actually serves to almost make you forgive Donnelly Oppenheimer. Almost it does help me to put all the blame on them giving the third writer. Scene had a pause and had least the some good work before this. Maybe he is responsible for the whatever works. I don't know that I had recommend buying this, but definite and worth a rental. I am not ashamed of it had on my shelf, but I am not going to have pulling this one out to impress friends and relatives. Conan the Barbarian 2011. In the interest of full disclosure, and I will go ahead and say that I am not exactly well versed in the vast mythology created by writer Robert E. Howard for his character of the Conan the Barbarian, a noted figure in pop culture who still resonates with fans worldwide even after 80 years. Sure, I have the 1982 Conan the Barbarian movie with the Ryan Schwarzenegger as well as the follow-up Conan the Destroyer and one of the Momoa's old boyfriends. Introduced myself a kid to bold at work created by the legendary artist Frank Freitas and the celebrated the iconic Cimmerian warrior. By the beyond that I not really know much about the Howard's original canon short story collection entailed. That being said, I was not really sure what to expect. The director Marcel Nispel Robert of the Canon franchise expect that Jason Momoa was set the step in the tutorial characters shows why the definitely easy on the eyes and that movie was shot in 3D. I went in the Canon Barbarian completely in the dark as to what it expect was the another sequel was its Robert and found it to be a peak balls out action of flick that it far the most brutal and the violent film of the entire summer. It has a decent story at its core, and while it is the absolute perfection, I did find myself entertained throughout most of the Conan the Barbarian, even if the vlog does end about 15 minutes too long. After the beginning of the Conan Barbarian, we will introduce our photographs and the parents in the midst of the epic confrontation and the battlefield month and the pregnant and still kicking as Conan's mothers give birth to the future warrior basically in the trenches while bodies are dropping right and left of her movement before she leads. After the two raised by the loyal father Conan's and young canon display very early in the childhood that has destined for the greatest as a barbarian. He is more of a warrior than many of the men in the village. Twice his own age. Wait till you see what happens when the young cannon faces off against a pack of savage tribesmen who try to attack the village and scale with a sword, and only outwon by his energy to find anywhere who happens to be around. One day, Cimmerian is ashamed of the malicious worldwide Khalar Zym's laws and quest of relatives and search missing piece of the mask of Anchor in his effort to gain the absolute power on the world of Hyboria. After conquering most of the villagers of Samri exams, his resources, daughter Marique, Amsijugon, and the henchman and Corin and his broken in their home forces the waffle leader to give up the piece of the mask of Caesar and the rest of his people. Destroy Corin makes the ultimate sacrifice since the most canon feature as a fierce warrior leader and already been ordinate, and the young barbarian is left the vengeful orphan looking to even the score with Sam. The film transition of a few years later when we meet much older canon who has been traveling the vast landscapes of the Hybrids looking for the Sam. Along his journey, Canon's quest for the Ravaged soon turns into a big sword clanking showdown and against Sam's the Marquis as the mechanical wildlife finally located the last pure blood are descended of the archons who blood holds to the Sam's plans for the importantly and the power over the world around him. It's during this showdown at the remote monastery the canon learns that the pure blood happens to be the Tamara and the young monastery student, and marital are expert the starts of the canon rescues and eventually evolves into the both in love interest and the follow as kicker in the film third act because one the lethal father-daughter team of the Zams and Marky began the ritual of invoke the power of the marks of Archon canon needs Tamara and her abilities to love the playing and field. As someone with very little expectations going to the canon the barbarian, I found myself both of entertained and continuously surprised by how much I continue to enjoy myself throughout the film as a whole. Director Nichols has built a quiet reputation as the remarking with the previous effort Friday 13th and the Texas Channel's massacre for the platinum drainage. The canon proves that it's possible to maintain a respectful balance between the homage and revenue, and perhaps the missteps in the previous reimagining may have the lead to do and the platinum donors that is efforts at the helm. The canon as well has done mistress job of creating a gritty and the realistic world of film more like a documentary than the fantasy film. I applaud the approach of the shooting practically rather than rolling on the green screen studio, which would have been far easier to do than the filming in the Belgium of the several months. That extra mile pays off and give canon a sort of historical documentary feel. The balance blends well with the fantastical aspect of the story. For those of who grew up loving the original versions and the film, you will pleased to know that in the version of canon, the barbarian does not really feel like the Nispel to trying to remark the classic film at all. In fact, fans of the original movie should experience a lot of what they want to see in the flick about their favorite barbarian. Will it also the Nispel the managed to pack into the quite a few surprise throughout canon as well as of the both long time fans and the newcomers alike should find the film a very satisfying experience. The entire success of whether or not a canon the barbarian remarks would actually work as sequels on the shoulders of stars Momo and the proves that here the portrayal as the Cimmerian warrior to be destroy Zam and his plans for the world domination that has most definitely a natural on the big screen. A hawking presence that exerts both unbridled and the energy and bravado riddle with the confidence Momo also the demonstrate with his performance in the canon the barbarian that is worthy. There is a such Schwarzenegger had thrown the deliver a performance that should have dropped on some head in Hollywood. Personally, I know I had show up the Momo again if it has the plan of the canon sequel to through because I thoroughly enjoyed the thought and energy put into this project. Momo not alone on looks the he was born with the sword in his hand, but it is also the poised to be next action and stars once at the film theaters everyone on the Friday. What also impressed about the canon the barbarian where the film and the female character and it is the canon is very much a testosterone filled action film, but both leading lead is Nichols and the MC Gone would not thrive others, kicking a little axe themselves. Nichols goes into the full combat and more during several sequences, and MC Gone's approach is a little bit more the abrasive, and she was uses a snake like the approach during battle that turns out to be just lethal as a full of the screen fight and whichever been. And the Tamara Nichols has been the chemistry with the canon star Momo and builds on another impressive action heavy resume after the recent role in the flaky like G.I. Joe and the Star Trekkie MC Gone, who still remains of one of my favorite actors to come out of the 90s, once again to deliver delightfully wicked performance and Marique that the often borderline and homage of the fruity Corgo himself. MC Gone in the solid actor when she playing a good girl, but I always enjoy her more when she playing the bad girl, and Conan never been more finished or more entertaining. The look of the Conan the Barbarian itself is a pretty spectacular. Well, and I'm not exactly sure if the film shot in 3D or converted in the post, but otherwise the 3D looks great, and I am happy to report the Nispal and his crew really heavily to practical effects and use the CGI only the minimally. In fact, I think Conan has the best looking blood I have seen in 3D flick in a while, to the point where I am honestly not surely whether or not the use to blood gags of Nispal has found a way to alleviate the look of the CG blood. Another aspect I really enjoyed about Canon the Barbarian is that the movie is infused with a lot of horror genre homage throughout. There are little notes of the Mummy, Thomas, and the journals, the affirmations, Freddy, Corgos, as well as the few more that I had rather not run off. You are planning to catch the flick this weekend. I terms the action and brutally as mentioned above. Conan is far by the violent film I have seen the whole year, and that only made it better film going experience for this writer. Just to give you an idea of how bad or brutal the action, if you try to make a drinking game just of the movies bedrooms and you have drunk within the first 20 minutes, and after the first hour you had probably a storage heap the booze laying on the theater's floor portions and output of the popcorn stuck off your face. If you are a love of enhanced action and the creative violence like Massive Corner should definitely keep your attention throughout its 112-minute running time. Speaking of running time, on One by with Conan the Barbarian is that felt like the film run about the 15 minutes to go along with short of the left me a bit under violent with the huge swans and between tutorial character and the Sams in the movie's final act. If you could have determined a bot of the rather mid second act, perhaps I would not have found myself looking at my watch toward the end. It's been the 27 years since we have seen Conan on the big screen, and I can think of a better reintroduction for the iconic character to new audience that Nispel Conan the Barbarian. The movie lacks like a living Frank, and the fruit is a painting brought to life, and the incredible talented group of the actor and the gifted directed by the helm, and they somehow managed to create one of the better straight up the action flicky of the year, while the incorporating and the enduring story of the should not drop to prove entertaining to the massive. And oh ho Momo hotness, the figure certainly did not hurt either. Review Conan the Barbarian 2011. Conan the Barbarian was released August 19, 2011. The film is directed by Marcus Nispel and stars Jason Momoa, Rachel Nessul, Stephen Lang, and the Ron Parliament. The plot says Conan the Barbarian saying revenge against the Khalar Zym, the man who was slaughtered by the people. Meanwhile, Khalar Zym and his daughter Marique seek the pure blood woman Tamara to unlock the power of an ancient mask. This movie is very mediocre with a couple things I think and I like, but the negative for outweighs the positive. What I did enjoy was a few of performance, especially Momoa and the Parliament. And Ron Parliament has this right to the delivers in lines, and that comes across a nonsense kind of guy, and that made me like him more than the script would have to allowed me. Momo has a lot of love to the Sweden's performance, but I thought that a pretty good job in the performance is at the least and par with Arnold in my opinion. Momo injects as well energy into the character that the script was lacking. Momo is easily the best part of the movie and the deserves a better kind of script to work with. I was really on board of the first act of the movie. It was great, but it is better what rest really because Run Parliament and the chemistry with Lew Howard and play going on in the opinion opening narrating of the Morgan Freedom was also kind of the cool 11 of the sense in exposing drum. That pretty much I was enjoy. I editing in this movie was pretty too more. I had more time figuring out what going in the action. There will like of five cuts and the sword swing and there's the terrible of the way editing action. The filming of the action is also superb giving how the close the camera is. This combined with the editing made the action pretty look closer and when an action fantasy that's a major problem. This is the Latrins and the Mecom Momo said did 80% of his stunts. It has the appreciate the stunt work. I cannot really see it. The plot is incredible, simplistic and lacking at the actual character work. It is a more barbarian ravens than the 1982 canon, which also did not have a very complex story but made up of it the character work and good action that really could not really do. Canon's arc is was not ravaged and get out without too many obstacles. He never grows when the final battle is just kind of tries again, which makes the final feel hollow. Every other character is also superb, bland, and the kind of forgettable. Tamara and love interest in the just Dasmal in the distress and the masculines in the film. The character artist in Conan best friend, but do not interact much apart from one two lines and arm wrestling match. The CGI in this movie in the incredible noticeable every time you see the CG blood or the magic or the monster is immediately pulls out of the film. Before you tell me that the shoot cut movie slug because it's a fantasy film and the come out of 9 years ago Lord of the Rings and the better fantasy CGI and that come out 10 years later. Jason Momoa tries is the hardest to put energy into a story which seems to discourage it first the act the track you think immediately and the movie will just be mediocre. By the film itself is pretty bad CGI will the experience if the terrible plot did not already and the fight scenes cannot even the save film because the filming and editing of them are very musicians and hopefully somebody and canon with a bounce back in the film worthy bear the character name again. Conan the Barbarian review. I will start this similarly to the way I did with the Rise of the Planet of the Apes and wonder whether the new Conan the Barbarian is just another mediocre remark of a well regarded franchise that will not only drop our doors on the pre-governed memories and the honored such Zivangers fans but also take their 3D inflated money. The difference between Mr. Monkey and Mr. Muscles is that while Kessler and Co swung with their critical acclaimed box office success, the new note Arnold Cannon just swung and missed. The unimaginative remark of the 80s cult classic that introduced such Schwarzenegger in the breakthroughs acting the probably would not the same for TV. What and Jason Momoa in this first starting film role. The new canon does absolutely nothing to displace Arnold as the prototypical fantasy warrior and yourself has to establish his own identity. Directed Marcel Niffel, who has to the experience with remark the Texas Chinese Marxist Friday the 13th and the cannot anything better for the rest of the life less cost, which includes Stephen Rank, Rose, MC Gone, and the Ron Parliament. The film deeply suffered from a forgettable plot and the unremarkable character. Even Ron Parliament and the Conan himself are minimally amusing. Momoa's Barbarian does not live up to the own name. Really exhibitive, extreme, ruthless, and thus does not come off of the truly barbarian. Do something like the savagely dig into the chunk of meat, whatever in a battlefield or the during, including fair. So the something beyond of the even the level of the typically staffed mean to shock the audiences in the illustrating the hierarchical bronze primary and the nature the roasting franchise do go through the more and the better be a caveman and the senior citizen. Slapster Solomon was a more convincing barbarian in the latest Rambo. I commend the valiant effort of the main trend rewriting of the film nudity and the graphic violence, some of the which was nice and the pretty cool. However, it's too uncommon in an otherwise boring adventure. It's MPPA and the rating is not think Canon the Barbarian failed to capitalize on it reduces the fail of 1300 and the Gladiator but is a generic action does not take the advantage of the film period setting. Canon reminded me in the Nispel Pathfinder manuals the blizzard and you can still cannot really what going to during most of the action what the particular effects laden sequence through the sand barrier. One was the clear and shooted stood out from the rest. Aside from the brief introduction, the post converted 3D was an exceptional and an impressive kind of the like most of the Conan the Barbarian remark. Sure, it had a handful of the satisfying bloody and the gore violence, but they have to bright in the overlong and the senseless one make epic. It's like the watching an unrated the extended version of the Scorpion King or the less CGI and the less brilliant Canon the Barbarian gets 2.0 out of a 5 stars or C or OK. Conan the Barbarian 2011. To simplify my thoughts on the Conan the Barbarian, it easy. This is movie is exactly what I thought and what I when I decided to watch it. It is an action movie without an original thought, and it's bones with a plot that served just to guide us through a great number of action scenes with the actor who seemed largely different about the hopping. We open similarly to original Conan the Barbarian. Our tutorial character Conan Leo Howard while he has the child and has the village attacked. His father killed by a man named Khalar Zym, Stephen Lang, who unearthed a piece of a mask that was hidden in the village. He claims that the mask will make him a god and what will able to rule much of the world once incomplete. However, once it put together, he tells that the mission is only halfway complete. The blood of a girl is needed as well. We find out later, and although why it takes Khaled 20 years to find her is not explained. That's when the pick after the village slaying Conan and who was the sole survivor is a pirate who goes around the killing people he deems to be evil. He will and he we watch him in an action scenes massacring bunch of the slaves trader rescuing and the slaves the proceeding or party on the pretty party he says to the people who was there when in and the father was killed. He find out from his man who did the earlier killing silence his name was not relative to Conan, and then the sets of outrage. It's the where we meet the pure blood woman and Tamara, who is required to Khalar plot to the unfor completely. Again, I don't know why he has waited all this time to find her, but has I wagger that daughter, the magical Morky, had to with the one hair tracking skills first. Maybe they were just waiting for the corner to foil them Conan and land of while as a mark you and Khalar chase. Oh, they had to tone of the action scene while they act. A lot of the things that happen don't make logical sense. And should they though this is a movie devoted almost entirely in action scene and why they are strucking together was not gave much thought. The plot is a hybrid by the previous two Conan film with some new element added in. The goal of the violence is research color that life because someone I will him a god. I guess that I Mercury had magical power although she has nowhere near as strong her mother especially was. I did not expect a deep plot and recently did not get one. This is your standard capture sacrifice affair with a little deviating from the standard in these types of films. The plot also does not get much of the switch things around because actions scenes pop up very 5 a minute in order to make sure we don't get the board. Thankfully, in a movie where the leader character and the supposed to be deep or emotional, this works but trying to focus on them. Another using the thankfully is how the inventive some of the action scenes are there in are not duplicate here, which means they are always kept fresh whenever an action the begin. I knew I was going to have fun for the most part. I was right. There is a couple that drag a little bit, and considering how many action scenes are there, a couple of them taking too long finish is major complaint. I was constantly entertained whenever the action and peak and I cannot action movie. That's the most important thing. I was actually surprised by how creative some of the set pieces were. Sword fights themselves can get boring no matter how good the geographic and is worried that is would be case with Conan, and that's why the happened though as normal animate and introduce including and the monster canon like creature and the sword with two blades and which of the more around. I'm not entirely sure how to describe it. Looked like to would be a pain of master. There is one of the major complaint to have with this picture feature this complete lack of the character development. Again, I argue that the depth and development is not essential to a film like this, but it could have the elevate and the beyond just being Luca. Cannon is angry Tamar, and the bland color is the determined to fulfill some prophecy, and while Mark is evil, that's deep agid gets save Conan and the Tamara relationship becoming entertained on the snow word. It is you would not expect the development, but there is just no much so that it will the film. It feels as there was a tone of the sense between the two cut. In one case, Conan order her around where is the next and they will sex. It does not happen quite that fast, but it's the pretty darn close. The roast action scenes in the Conan was actually the final is the anticlimactic and the given but promised earlier artillery disappointing. I wanted a large scale fight, but I got was a decent sport fight. The entertaining, but it did not live up to what I told should happen. It ensured why my took the story in the direction because I dropped the reign of the money. Conan the Barbarian gave a pretty and the budget of $90 million, and without big name stars, and most of the money must have gone the special effect. A large number of these effects gone unnoticed with the sand creatures and the garlands like monster being the heavily CGI portion. Maybe there were four more aspects that I don't notice, but there's the money shorts. One of the ending should not have been too much for us. I actually did not have a problem with the Jason Mama in the lead role. She surely has not physically impressing and Arnold such was the nature, but the movies around were the can, the swinging sword look fun. The standout of the film was Rose Amsicon as a Marquis, who as the she given both most of interesting character as well as that is devils. I wanted to see more of them in a makeup. It did not play to her looks at all, and if nothing as she a memorable character that steals everything she is. In the end, I got expected one of the canon Barbarian. I did not get a plot of the character that had depth. Instead, a good bunch of invention action scenes that kept the entertainment for a couple of hours. Was it great? Absolutely not, but it could have been. A character had been stronger. I cannot deny I had a fun time with Conan, though whatever the taking back and enjoying the spectacle and the laughing at how ridiculous everything that happens was. A clash of witless civilization. Conan the Barbarian involves a clash of civilization whose vocabularies and the limited of screams, outs, grunts, howls, acclamations, exclamation, variants, screenshots, and wild blows, yells, and woof. I had loved to get my hands on the paychecks for the subtitling with the movie. The plot involved, oh, never mind, you have your barbarian and they kill one another in unending series of the battle scene. I guess Conan is a good and guy, but what difference does it make? He has the cause of a brave. He has driven by the revenue against the sadistic Khalar Zym, who trapped Conan's father under a vat of molten iron, assigned young Conan to extort and the little muscles to try to keep it from tipping, and screamed at the old man, "You will watch your child die trying to save your." Luckily, Conan, the muscular Jason Momoa, survives and grow up with the words with the photogenic score on the face, where the wastewater molten iron dripped, and his father Conan and Ron Parliament had earlier forgotten. The sword is still mortality earlier still than Fan Conan was delivered on the battlefield by the emergency, and the Caution performance by the Corans on sword on the child mother who survived long enough to say, "He shall name the Conan the we was the weak, the legged, and the brave to say Conan the Barbarian." The movie is a series of the violent conflict. People who despite the convincing to me play the video tell me maybe if you get just someone else playing one. I feel it was now the canon curves. We have the dissembles and otherwise inconvenience the citizens of the several improbably city each of the time in the financial situation. The evil Khalar Zym's his daughter Marique turn up the regular uttering impressions, and the Marquis especially forced on the canon's warrior goal Bal the Tamara. The Marquis is the space of the work. She has to white pan makeup, blood red lips, and the cut little facials, tattoos, and the wicked sharp metal tolerance on her fingers at the point of the blows, and some magic gloves at the corner, and the dust and into the theme of warriors made of sand. This is a neat special effect, although the raise of the question if turns back to sand when cannon slides of what kind of life is that. The film ends with a very long battle involving Conan, Carol, Zams, Tamara, and the Marquis sentence. And never thought I had right. It takes place largely with the Tamara straps and a revolving wheel above vertiginous dropped flames of the below mentioned in made of the volcano, but the never further explained. The entire caverns and the cromwells around that big chunks of the rock falling everywhere spectacularly upon them. Conan the Barbarian is a battle that crude, worthless high-tech CGI contrivance in the which of artificial technique has been overlooked, including 3D. The third dimension once again that illustrated the prince that we even the more largely takes place indoors in the dimly lit spaces. The last thing you need in pairs of the dark glasses. Conan the Barbarian 2011. Spoiler level low. John Milius's Conan the Barbarian 1982 came out when I was 13 years old. By all rights, it should have been right in the my sweet spot. I was a pubscent white boy who read comics and played Dungeons and Dragons. After all, I but barely remember that movie, and I what remember most is not liking it all. A part of the problem certainly was that Arnold such Schwarzenegger looked, the sounded, and the acting nothing like the version of the Conan I knew, which was the chassis stoic and warrior in the comic by the Roy Thomas and the John Biscoma. But the largely probably was that even for my 13-year also the movie was not any fun. And now lest you think I am claiming to have the any kind of the taste that age the movie I really liked the year as a forgotten by movie of the rip-off of the Conan called The Sword, and the created a low budget epic about the matured hero Lee Horace and the corded by the sword that has not one, no two, but the blades kind of all March 3 Roser and turned on the edge. Expected two of the blades could be the out of the sword like gained metal bottle rocket, which came in the surprisingly handle. I was the sword and the score in the theater and would watch it my friend on the VHS many times over the next few years. And I remember it as the extremely gory, oddly slashed, and the peak barley breasted, and the westerns and blood sock violence. It was, make no mistake, shot to my thin editor. I expect that I knew it was just a time, but it was a fun shit that the knew it was shit, and shit that the fulfilled all my declarations, and the requirements of the gratuitous violence grows out of the effect and non-threatening titulation, which boring and bring as the new canon and the barbarian directed by the Marcus Nispel. It is too shit of the course, but the best I think can say about it. I intended the sincere praise, however faint, in that the new movie reminded me more for on the sword and the sorcerer than of the original Conan the Barbarian. It has the baddest one of the story. It has a single memorable line of the dialogue, and it was been written as through the screenwriter and honestly unaware the character are in fact supposed to develop. It is searching gory. It's the shockingly misogynistic in the lovely with the prosecutions, but it also shall I admit and kind of fun. Not the makers of Melissa film, but a new loose interpretation of the Robert E. Howard Pulp Fiction character Conan the Barbarian opened the film. Pandoria's narration by the slumming and the understandable, incredible Morgan Freeman, in the which we are told that the evil warlord in the collecting the brawn and process of the magical power granting marks will grant him evil the domination. From where we jump to the story proper, which we began artillery and the outro right from the start. Nispel in the intent on the sparing the sequemish from the set motions out of the canon is the verb cam as a marital wound in the Cimmerian's mother ladders and grant out his hero impropriety particles, and the satirizing the further run parliament and finish right there the battlefield. So canon was, we are told repeatedly, is the battle born having been from the mother's bomb ultimate rapid. The particular accounts for his rather violent and the programmating view of the world in one of the film. The best sequence young canon and was the likable Lowell Howard Jones were the warriors test intent for the older boys and runs to the mirroring bondage and another tribe to another boy. But young canon of the course is fairly he takes the introduced as a single handle displaying the kind of the combat parts, and only 12-year-old with the massive warmth and the Tamara of the team professional fight geographic and the code but cannons basically as go fly the bosom of the blood Socked Barbarian horde in the sword shortly lies as a aforementioned evil workers Khalar Zym arise with his evil force in the search of the these missing swords of the MacGuffin. In the process, Zym's wife of the Cimmerian tribe and Ard's daddy issues cannons already significant movement. Tamara and now the has as a taste of damage and blood, which of the film dresses is more than enough characters development for this kind of the film. Morgan Freeman's ends of the year's paycheck with the full lines narration with the Carrie Conan having the understanding and the playground authors with this is a play by Jason Momoa. I must confess I was predisposed to the Momoa's canon having loved his color Dragon and Drog by the HBO's Game of the Thrones. Furthermore, I will go as far to say the Momo has the potential by a real movie stars. Obviously, good look, the ridiculous, fat, and far for the more charming than an unrolled situation. Even was ignored as far as it has a good action since there simplifies enough information. Yet this is Game of the Thrones roll through impressive demanding literal acting and the colonel demanding even more moments is also called upon the glare mechanical and the pose dramatically which was the excel. It is also the haver of gleam Bemu's self-awareness in the performance that surges in the intelligence undercuts and the silence and the four evidence in the corner over the sluggish beyond the splash of the Andy, my girlfriend, who is referred to him Momo, who want to the provide a public service announcement about the weather you see is necked and absurdly made in this film you has a place brave Conan. I most sad it is the particularly nice guy which is the consistent which is the Robert E. Howard version by the my tribal audiences looking for a traditional heroic hero. His only motivation in the Revenant and the spent filming movie from the fight sequence for the fight sequence chasing the Zams and the witch daughter Marique Rose Amsigon the voice face and the both the troubling unrecognizable hearing the later is the need to blood of the woman named Tamara. Rachel necessary to complete the Rachel's canon simply converse and the woman himself treating him such a appealing and partisans measuring that cannot be by the falling with him. Tamara is actually fairly complains herself that everyone in the world learned to fight from the war. But Nichols is unremarkable in part of the world recommends a much better actor to being live. But actually this beside the point in a film where this is absolutely nothing but the scene on the menu of the Jews only aspect of the always watchable Ron the Parliament. Moma probably give the film most restrained performance characterization to of the menu corner does not change or go or learn anything from the moment has word been until the end of the film what that does do kill a whole of the people monsters and he does it the albums and the movie is just the excuse of some impressively glory and world stage to the piece and done on turns and the terms alone it delivers the camera work in the endless fight skin border on the and music and the places whereas the one two creative sequences that offer things we have never seen before including a fight with creatures that look like men but dive in out of the ground like dolphins. The climax of the film, including a sword fight, Conan and the time have other the prostitute body of Tamara. He is trapped and against will that film is a just scams and it raised practically over a leave the purchase such height of prosecutions that it becomes ridiculous fun. Look at try to review every movie more or less or in on terms and true to the pulp roots. Conan the Barbarian has no pretensions of the being anything more of than a red read movie of the pubescent boy who are possessed too young to get the intro and R-rated movie. There is a copies and amount of blood. There are a witty, exciting fight scenes and there are naked baby in the background and one carefully it is the motions music video sections and indeed shit it is a fun shit. I am not sure I am recommend it but I can see the having gone in the lowest expectation. I enjoyed the form and then I thought I mean it is the sword and the scores but bloodthirsty 13-year-old boys looking for a late night and movie rental the watch the friend could do a lot was movie review Conan the Barbarian. Conan the Barbarian 2011, directed by Marcel Nichols, starting Jason Momoa, Stephen Lang, Rachel Nestor, Ron Parliament, Rose Amsigon, and the Bob Sapp. Synopsis. Canon the Cimmerian journeys across the continent of the Hyboria on the quest to avenge the murder of the father and slaughter of his village. Spoilers. I went into the Conan with my mired expectation. I asked myself what one could reasonable expected going into a Conan. I had asked you before to reading on ask yourself the same. What will make a good Conan film? I settled on your four key elements: violence, sources, coal, Tashians and the landlord and the expectational buff gentleman saying the role of canon. Now on these four criteria and along you had probably so that was a perfect film. However, I found myself immediately and suddenly put off from the moment of the film began from the opening battle where the Conan's mother dying on the battlefield cuts his writing baby and the baby cut off her one stomach. Only we have his father Coran and the Raflik style Hoyas into the your victorious. I had this neat feeling that I had the stripped down and began masturbating with the blood of the recently sacrificed animal. I think opening the film like that without the briefing moment of one might cure the character may have the altered and the viewing incorrigible humor through the once again and was not a horrible film by the stretch, but I think that several elements and one on the wrong footage. The sorcery element is good played out by the Marquis Rose Amsigon as the tool of her father Khalar Zym's Stephen Lang. I have to go that I am really getting sick of the Stephen Lang being typecast in the Avatar-esque and the dimensional bad guy or role. He is such a phenomenally great actor, and if you have seen in something like Public Enemies, you will realize that does not have to bounce and the playing everything big to the fighting and then turns the special effect and use sparsely. I think that it allowed to spend your disbelief and Amsigon really suit the sorcerers and the does well it han at the muted form. The best element of the film is by the Jason Momoa's physically presence and the intensity does real justice on the corner role and it is far enough away from the such was nature originally role that makes the marks. He delivers great often and the Masolish and one listening the strength by the barbers on the Antigones. He also looks the barbarian part even the convincingly that Arnold for the Conan little beyond it is a aviating larger that film named Momo like a savage with a dust smashing job on the first race of the game Thrones. Directed Marcel Nispel focused on the time the claustrophobic scenes like a view of the scope that you may be expecting in a sword sandals flake which has you to the close and the personal with every piece of the brutally. I don't if the subversive my the expectations of the bringing you closer to the brutal, but at times I really wanted to see the brute force of the Conan Momoa's action and against as words of enemies is less subjective view. In fact, at time I think that the director discussion and take away from the Momoa's presence on the screen in the spirit of the 80s of SWAT and the Sandals Flake. There is also expectational tacky sex and sense where the Conan deaf flowers and the pure blood that the Mar are required to fulfill the violence and planes of the world domination. It occurs only after the Connor's ship in the attack by the violence force and see the lady question brutally murder a few people of the case only will be worthy of a good rank. Unconsciously, there is reviews coming for and initially intent. I really think that it is fond of journal we enjoy and find it the but incredibly it found the cake and the box. There was also much that I did not like in the movie than the things I did am the does get a sequel Momo and the stay someone the tweaking in the story and the director department Conan could live on and but the forget the blood of sacrificial insert that animal across here if had we get along. Conan the Barbarian 2011, starring Jason Momoa, Stephen Lang, Rachel Nichols, Ron Parliament, Rose Amsigon, Bob Sapp, Loy Howard, Steven O'Donnell, Nonso announced, and Rad Ravi, directed by Marcus Nisbel. Expectation super low. Against all odds, Conan the Barbarian is not a gigantic failure that surely try a lot of ways to drive the film into the ground, but thankfully that are not completely successful as the reimagining of the Canon's original story is pretty damn entertaining, but a good film is not. Although I was a pretty folded by the first 30 minutes or so, this section action is by far the best in the film, and soon is it's over. The Conan is actually Conan. Things started on turn south. This is not really a remark, as the story is completely different from the John Milius. Conan the Barbarian is a broad strokes by the somewhat similar, though eyes the uh, both films open with the Conan's film being brutally murdered by an evil villain, and Conan wishing for the remnants of violence are nothing alike. That the sheer formidable screen presence inspiring a young Conan or his quest of the revenue. So I suppose in this way it is a remark, but a remark in the basic premise alone. The key difference in that Arnold-led Conan is an adventure film, and the Momoa-led film in the action movie where the Arnold Conan tried and the slowly plot is his ravage infiltrating his enemy fortresses and killing their massive nasses and massive cannon, all about the brutal violence, and has no time the foremost anything as characterization, dialogue, emotion, all of the walls by the voice set and may were for the brutal action and force the welcome. This Momo Cannon is cunning and willing to go to the lengthy necessary to go to the needs. It's relatively brutal when the young Conan slice off a henchman and knows, but you see how the Conan later deals with the man and the eventually character up with him as an adult. But a time went through with the actions, and after action scenes filling up before Michael's body in the Conan's wake, it was a must to take the action is especially well short of falling it can the challenge time, and there is virtually nothing as to young the engagement and the thankful the violence and colorful drawn. It is the element of one of the modern flags, like it is the frustrating because the violence of given more development by the Conan, who feels to like a secondary character in this own movie. Take off intense the transmission of the young Conan 20 something bad Conan is the malicious family in the slowly transition on the wheel of the pain, showing how the Conan and the suffered over the years even the but also the has the giving remarkable amount of the strength and the reliance is brilliantly subtitles and actors bring the honor into the film. In the remark there is a very brief narration directed after the young Conan sequence, and then BAM Conan the Barbarian. At time I pushed this issue aside, but the film more I realized it was a symptom of the film crisping and the disease. The editing arterials in this case I especially taking about the construction of the film in the board sense and not to and the bolt of the individually sense the film fails cut to have the pure into the essential and the lead of the action sense. I had not liked to that there is a backload and the cut of the footage laying somewhere the ad could have to fill in this strange and the gap and fully realize the potential of this film. Instead we jump from the location to location and sense to sense of time before the necessary and the correct to do so. The only time I don't feel that was the opening sequence, which shows that their version of the Conan has been something much more than it, and it unfortunately as a Ron Parliament and outstanding a Conan father, and I wish had to take to better that film. Jason Momoa certainly looks the part of the Conan, although he does not look like the child of the Ron Parliament, and the woman that played Conan's mother in a very brief but the high memorable scene. Perhaps it was the Milliman and kid whatever the Hyboria element of the millennium whatever they had to work with the however we could get, and the moment does look like to dress up with a barbarian warrior where the father are all the dialogue saying there are not many of them, but I feel like the blended just about everyone. He has not only alone though his female read Rachel Nichols seeking to the same fast piece and understand matter. Perhaps it was a directorial choice, but before you can think you much other dialogue and directorial choice, here's a come and other action scenes if nothing as fans of barbarian action and the definitely able to get their fill with his one. Canon Barbarian is surprisingly entertaining provided you could forget your issue with a long enough to enjoy. It was somewhere in the middle. If you have to disappointed by the film that the follows original canon film, it is definitely deliver a lot of good stuff, admits blurs and the last act in the way to ridiculous to be believe. I cannot resources. It was thoroughly enjoyed the end of the corner destroyer and the equal unbelievable situation. So you the canon mark is much better than I had expected to do. Unfortunately it also shows enough genuine potential and also highly disappointing. Movie review Conan the Barbarian 2011. Some but a couple of drunken girls and a bass heavy soundtrack seem to be the inspiration behind the Sophomoric Conan the Barbarian, a remark of an equal 1982 motion picture of the same name. It's a film that was probably scrabbled on the Momo paid by a fat and boy had one of the many cherry bombs and was about to pass out in his bathroom. The epitome on the barge in him, bin fodder and expect with the packing of the major studio. This production is one of that you had expected on board to direct. Hell, if his word looked my Robbie, it had be easy to mistake for his hard work with the must have been on the vacation because instead the moron behind his closer trust moron behind this colossal third in the Marcus Nispel and the back screenwriter and the help him are Thomas Dean, Dominic Shua, Opner Hammer and the scene hot. The plot which is rushed forward a few storyboard exploitation. It is a follows one on the battlefield. Ocean Jason Momo grows up to his size, entertained and slaughtered by the Khalar Zym. Stephen Lang, a sadistic bandit, tries to create a marks of the skull which has the power to grant him unmatched power among the dead is Conan. Ron Parliament, Conan father, years pass and the Conan grows uploading the average people. I am now a powerful warlord says a pure blood Tamara. And who is the final piece of the puzzle in this quest for the world domination from his own out. The film is long stretch of the graduates and the violence, most of which is the tasteless as even young children and the expecting mother are not exclusive and are there unusual from the brutality. As always, the barbarians there is come a heavy load of the magicians. Here, the woman blunted object on the Tamara as Finch, a female is referred to as properly, and before being born, the gagged by the hero himself are required of the Hollywood blockbuster aspect in joints and the matter how influential or force between the two, resulting in one of the most unromantic make out the session in the cinematic history. The peer attack each other the face like a doe mad of dogs hungry of Joe's steak and are thankful for them and the things became hated a pile of the convent laying and the middle of the war torn nation. Does scene have any relevance of the plot? No, and quite frankly the transition from the gore of positions and leave mark less the smooth of the producer probably and wanted to squeeze in list of the TA before the credit roll, and yet there is look noted in the fact and the mostly European women France and around the topless flaunting particularly large breasts handpicked by Carrie Barden, Cat Dawn and the Paul shown on the lad casting process and the ironically Marky Rose Amsigon and evil Scorsese in the most independent of the trobe between she trying in the recalment and Brass mother religious he want the Khalar to push into the dirt and the type of the message that's sport to send your ladies. The again Conan the Barbarian is neither targeted toward female nor it is supposed to follow a mortal standard. Unlike most films, the script is pretty unimportant and just several jumping of point for the action. Apparently, you cannot just a 2 hour display of gore. The story follows the simply template, having a clear cut photo against violence with the purpose is power, the beautiful dam, and the same of the length, the revenge retribution. Here is another cheap glorification of the death and the torture is the discuss the popcorn entertainment, but the original two was the several float and the sword suffered the same lack of the character development, making it particularly unwatchable unless you are in the Arnold Schwarzenegger headmastic performance. The strategy behind the Marcus Nisper remark to up to the end, revving up the bloodshed and the process for the dumping down a franchise that the need to disappear drinking. During the certain point, it's obviously that Nisper tried too hard but did not stop to more balanced audience remember for the laughing with joy and at time a laugh with them. It was not because the content used of the animals as a slant showed, but the rather the post pure acting. Also, I probably also so hide my acting frustration about the actually paying of a ticket. Momo is taller, dark, and the handsome. Also notable for the work on the head race of the Game of Thrones, making a perfect fit for the Conan. However, the performance also other consists of the either of Rise, Ibo, and the simple scream. Granted, the Spains and were the much room of the breath, and his character is designed to the a ruthless killing machine, and whose wreck a barbarian not only stands to low the social standing but also for his thirst of the blood, efficiency with the sword, and the lack of mercy. He does not have any remorse and shows the emotion other burning agents perhaps that would have been expectable, and the action sequences but more thrilling but on the surface and the throughout the body count in the hundreds thousands of the gallons of blood and spread and tans terrible beards accompanied in the skull crushing made them without the photographs and the audience ramps they can cut about these sequences made nothing, and because they are luck in the complete and they had to work with the outcome of the each battle. I am open minded when it comes to cinema. Unfortunately, one has been mindless and enjoy the Conan the Barbarian. This war dance is vulgar and just playing boring. Think of it, the season of the witch part 2. Conan the Barbarian 2011 film review. I was accused of being too harsh in my review of the roboted Predator last summer. I had known that Conan the Barbarian awaited me. I may have been the kindest. The 2011 version of the Conan is the depressing and the unfocused mess. I walked into this new film with low expectation, and even though we are not mad, this is the picture is DOA in its first scene, a laughable bad battlefield birth in the Witch of Lighting subside in order of Conan's father to perform an emergency carriage deliver and never recovers. The production looks cheap and not worthy of the standard set of a high profile release such as this. There is a wall of wall action, but it redundant and the dull when it will should exciting. The screenplay force the cast the utter enhance and the process and make blood proclamation of the absolute nonsense. Anyone looking for a concession of the earlier fame may have fun in the spotting to small homage directed Marcus Nispel has sprinkled throughout. Unfortunately, that's were the amusement and they rotting the dark and the intentionally and humors in the movement that strives to serious and the mindless. Ron Parliament is educated in a small road of Cannon's father and the sons of amongst the last occurring including the entire film. Stephen Lang of the Avatar film is effective is the role of Khalar Zym, the man responsible for the murdering Cannon's family, and the tribe Rose MC gone despairing behind of a ton of the makeup by the still managed to make an effectively creeps and the screen sounds of her minimally right character market both the legends and the MC Gone seems to be in the joke and the play their role with the right amount of the same going chewing and the creative the costume and most moviegoers which have to weather the central casting of the relative unknown Jason Momoa is the worth of comparison to such was nature iconic the role the answer. Unfortunately, it is a round side and the Momoa is a physical scream man, but is the action is stiff of the pipes and the carrots on the imposting frame. Such nature choose to play the which are certain, dispatching the hundred, the unrailing heart of the Conan's childhood stars. Momoa's portal seems to be the clanning and the fought by and his page the pattern come off like the surface of the dirt and the Hyboria of age it had the action and the sink of the film from the get-to. Canis the Barbarian is a harmlessly track of first and just plain boring. There is a many sword battle and loads of sorcery, but the absolutely the movie magic and altered ways of the $90 million as well as the massive missed opportunity of some of the summer fun. A total misfire the rank almost the year's Ross film directed Marcel Nature stars Jason Momoa, Rand Parliament Rose, MC Con Stephen Lang. Movie review Conan the Barbarian 2011. Generic action beats make up with the some gorgeous production design and a dispiriting narrative to bring Conan into the modern cinematic age. The end result is something that feels forced and fed up old idea, lacking in interesting and ultimate and disappointing mixture of moderation and the old school expectation. Directed Marcel Nippel, years of release 2011. Principal cast Jason Momoa, Rachel Nichols, Stephen Lang, Rose McGowan, Bomb Sapp, Stephen Donald, and Ron Parliament, Nanso Anos, Sad Thamless, Red Ravi, Morgan Freeman. A promising running time 110 minutes. Synopsis: After his fame in the slaughtered by a after his family is slaughtered by a power-hungry warrior, young Conan grows to seek the revenge. What we think? Generic action beats mix it up with some gorgeous production design and the despite narrating to bring Conan in the modern cinematic age. The end result of something the feels force fed up in old idea lacking in the trusting and ultimately disappointing mixture of the modernism and the old school expectation. I love, I slay, and I am contented. Anybody growing up through the 80s would be aware of the original film version of the Conan the Barbarian, asserted by the utterly convinced Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it is the cultural legacy children of the 80s should be the shuttered and learn to not only does Marcus Nispel robotic remark imagination of set franchise does little of command itself anything other than a standard cookie cutter Hollywood action and the realistic the blood motion and the hint of the nudity which will not doubt and it is a higher censorship rating by the film might otherwise deserved by the Zealand native Jason Momoa is barely up to such major iconic portraits and the compression while the univitrate it almost certainly inevitable and although Momo has a look and the physics and the requires he lacks and done by the equal wooden badly handled script that the fumbles and the perhaps specter of the story where it should soar Fox coming to the corner for the first time the mic themselves with all the focus in all the film never strives to anything subtle on the first of the falls of the character might feel a little down that will it has said and done canon in the barbaric almost entirely in the name only after his film in the brutally started by the Zam Staffenlang a power hungry world and intent capturing an ancient marks of the power canon Jason Momoa grows up by seeking revenge upon who is the father and drawn parliament and mother away from his Conan traveler the land looking for the Zams had by the front artist lawns when the stumbles Azams and the casing man drawn as cap female monkey monk Tamara Rachel Nissel who happens to the chosen one of his direct descent of the original anchor resources and the blood of allows them to roll and land of the Iron Fist rescues and the Tamara cannon uses the presence as a way to lure Zams to a fight. Cannon loses the fight but returns to Zams stronger to final defeat his enemies and save the world from the tyranny. Conan as a character created by the other Robert E. Howard back in the early part of the 20th century. Howard born in 1906 and would gone to the comet suicide aged only the 30 in this brief time of life we have gone of the literature the first modern heroes alongside advertised by the Boris Tarazet and the John Carton and the Sherlock Holmes the influence of the canon on the sword and sorcery genre of the writing both in the traditional literature and then burgeoning coming book from the cannot be understand and it is something of the testament the power of the character that has endured and nearly 100 years alongside Anis and Florine the Conan other film adaptation of the Howard work and had been produced particularly Clore the Conqueror and the 2009 Salman Khan by the Nun have provided the success of his most famous creation like the Disney John Carter in the 2011 Conan the Barbarian attempts to kickstart and the franchise based on the famous property and this is the same way Disney attempted floundered through exclusive budget and the lack of audience attention Conan was met with the model poor critical review and other confused marketing plot a blow which obviously did not capture audience like the longest and the probably hoped. This is my calm harder face. Conan the Barbarian suffered from a multitude of the problem most of which can the boil down the script. The film has character who aside the Conan himself are largely uninteresting. Even the center band a guy soundtrack Stephen Lang a less and the legitimate amount of the development the story rattled along the without a pause throwing the meaning of character location and the plot point on the screen but the script healthy and the pickled nature and the lopsided attempt to integrate magic and the supernatural into the story of reputed realism does not get gel like to should instead the kitchen sink approach to Conan's result in the blanket of the white noise throughout much of the film's running time weathering inspired romantic subplot and the look of the dramatic tension drawing and the sub balance of the audience involvement away from the screen and not on anything else and really is not so say the film utterly incumbent if you have to going to try the brink of the franchise for a modern audience. You really need to give it more modern feel in the terms of the story, character, and reason of the exciting to try of the screenwriter and attribute to the film Thomas Jane, the Donny, Joshua Oppenheimer, and the Shane Horde have the crafted a screenplay which take a scene of the purpose. I should mention that the opening 15 to the 20 minutes with the young canon Lew Howard appreciately enough saying these family butchers by the Sam's Force are phototypically by the crafted living the film the flaunted once again and Conan take of the visage Momo and has to actually and can't rather than reacting. I see your anger and raise some score. The film action sequences of there is a capious number does not and the manage to be exciting you had expect. Carriage chases, crowd battles, and the braver movement of the sand people most ghost things catching Conan and the Tamara around an abundant output and the world mounted and the world famed, but at times they are added incorrectly and with such a frequently desire to keep the camera too close to the action determine which exactly is going on. Nispel traction waves between the overhead and the flat out direction almost it has the conscious awareness of the legacy of Conan trying this partly not to stir it up and doing to unflattering to the material and almost to restraining the violence of the film is a borderline and the average there is blood, the zero gore and the use of suppressing artificial and the fronts are seems to focus and the displays if you are the production now it would not be throughout the positively by the fans it did not provide some dread go here and there the action sequence lack agency even though they might feel otherwise to the general viewer and they came and they go without the really leaving lasting impact. There are the scenes that make their mark and make themselves felt in some way but the difficult the emotion within the battles word fight and the pumping echoes enthusiasms and the unmarketable vapidity. The Mercenaries will come to the canon with the resume the encumber into the style over substance genre in this respect perhaps in the Conan as a good as it have to be in the man behind the 2003 Texas Chainsaw Marcus and plus the 2009 Friday the 13th remark getting a sense of his career trajectory yet does manage to bring a sense of the pop style to Canon's word with some traffic and the design to production value. So backup is the Minister's Rise, the Casual Pluses, and the Manner of High Fantasy. Ashrafines and delivered by Stunning Beauty by the DM Thomas Cross. There is a fine amount of the green screen wall, the two, and the while unfortunate table are the young of the quite obviously by and the large of the film handsome design spot by the scope of the story. We are so dirty everywhere. As far as the actor involved go, only the Momo Fear really here to Momo we appeared in the Game of the Throne in the similar kind of the role. Portiers Conan with the impassively well trained and the honor and lacing and real barbarism whatsoever expected by Tracy note of the screen brutally which is not shown. Momo certainly cut on the appreciably muscles figures as all his sword and rather the sword is pretty the legs of the gravity and pure satis of the Swansea portrayal payables although what as the Mrs. Psychologist and the makeup of the performance Momo's no Olivers and he has more the adaptive to emote one required richness as a stage the instruct of the Conan and around whom much of the story poverty is beautiful that at that Alifish the Peter Jackson seems to find out the lesson and she was never overbranded with the everything approaching decent characterization. She accepted purely as something of Conan focus on what has not aiming for the revenue sequence and perhaps probably actually a love sense between the Conan and the Tamara is provided and the slapping to flash together as the negative content and the Stephanie Meyer novel. Canon's blowjob. Stephen Lang and Jesse Brink is the crazy bad guys and violence much like the Conan crashes in the waiter of without military hardware to back him up and the largest performance and the noise in a big budget B movie against a lock waiter and the through is the considerable screen presence around the whenever he can and the battle by the nearby unrecognizable and the Rose MC gone the Marquis the half blade and the daughter's arms uses to obtain all the needs to achieve the power MC who comes across across the bizarre max of the Fredder's cars, and the one of the canvas from the Hallers is Gribbly, and the rest also is a largely makeup driven effect. The anything to bring, she bring the roles, and so next plays the role of the artist. I had to look the name up because I never quite picked up by the watching and the actual film like a poor man Mitchell Clark and the dancer have while hardly in the film and brings back into the missing when he is not there is the rest of the cast and hidden behind some wonderful makeup and Moria's continuance on the municipal jewelry, summer work and the white nose I spoke of earlier. That's them. Oh no, my father's Canon's The Barbarian tries to pulp the action and somewhere misses the mark. Perhaps it a film was described the almost enormous than the film and frustrating than accomplished. I had hoped in his well, normally assured the horror attraction might be the important action with the sense of the blood and violent style and in many respects and almost attention that generally though the film flourishing the virgin time and cannot recovering enough to remain interesting in a confused often befitting mixture of action magic of the breathing and the beauty layering of the official justified and the better scenes that the obvious and more than the entertain instead of the being a barbarian the canon is a largely avoidable affording the generally neither excitement of the energy when I should be branding over with both. Conan the Barbarian movie review. Conan the Barbarian is available to watch on Apple TV. The movie opens with a map and the narration, following a common method to try and show that what you are about to view is something of an epic. The narration is provided by the magical voice of the Morgan Freeman. I feel was picked to try and bolster the epic feel of the movie. However, this is no Lord of the Ring. It may start with an epic battle over destroying a magical object, but it quickly set it that apart is when a man drawn parliament has to perform an emergency cash-in on the drawing to five and his own sword. This is a show canon was born of battle. The superfluous first half of our accesses to only show you how to capable Canon Jason Momoa is a killing when he has young and obviously that when the becomes an adult he has going to be a non-stop killing machine. The plot of the movie is that of the Ravage with Will. It was only written to showcase just how to good Canon is at killing. There is obviously no danger for him which makes it hard to care of him. Around the middle of the film is the obligatory first confrontation with the village on the hero wants to kill the canon the forces of against the evil Khalar Zym and the his past warning daughter Mark Rose Amsigon during his fight to cannot keep his force by the Empress Tamara Rachel Nichols safe. During his fight since Marky caused a spell that ominous creature of form from the sound of cannon the special effect looked good and the juggled multiply monsters well. However, it's off to only keep the number of the fight scene up. There is a fight scene toward the and just before the final confrontation, it takes place on the platform above. What at the time of this is the spirit of sacrifice prisoners to tentacles beasts of the dance. This is a nice and virtual match. It is remained in the fantastic world and not just word and the sandals. Also, it was obvious there was no danger in the canyon. He does the need to keep someone else alive. I found the just scene a little more exciting than the overdrawn finally confrontation. The final confrontation involved Canon, Tamara, Mark, and the Khalar Zym. Most of the time, Tamara contribute nothing. The fight and the screen instantly. The fight was a bore and the only served to show the Khalar Zym's plan to start to come the fruition only to have to taken away because canon. That's why this is movie the essentially a revenge action flirt and dark of the fantasy world that it best to remind the audience they are watching a fantasy movie. There is never sense of threat and things the rush the movie is spotted with the CGI establishing show to try the showcase exciting location and this why understanding this somewhat good scene with the heavy violence and the conclusive fight drags on the way too long. The acting feel unlike standing the roles Amsigon being by the main perpetrator. The performance is satisfying and the ways to come across although is always straining. Stephen Lang does not come to across commanding violence to fear the Rachel Nichols presence is easily forgotten. Jason Momoa fought the anti-hero action start while he has the smile and the deadpan humor and the body that all action heroes need. He was the best performance in the movie. However, that it is not saying a lot if you are a fan of movie with actor like Jason Statham or the most of the cast of the acceptable with this is the movie for you and the end of the day it is the action revenant flick on the doubling of the fantasy a popcorn flick. Despite its many shortcomings and the rushed feel, I did find the entertaining. It just was not very good. Conan the Barbarian movie review. Just when you thought it was safe to go back to the movie, they are resorting concept and the entire film from the 1980s like Footloose, So Help Me and the Conan the Barbarian based on the Robert E. Howard Pub's magazine hero. Beefy Jason Momoa stepped into the Arnold Schwarzenegger sandals to star in the new screen adaptation which was one make vivid and the entertaining use of 3D. Given that I had no expectations for this picture, I thought it was not bad. It is the elaborate, well mounted, and never dull. Ron Parliament is well cast, and the Conan father, the powerful leader of a tribe known as the Sanimates, and his death at the hands of the cruel a revival stands his son a long term and the cost of the revenge and the satisfaction he even the allows himself to be the captured by the one point of the can get closer to the man the means to kill the Killers and played by the Stephen Lang, the violence and the waiter and his daughter and exhorting scorers and played by Rose Amsigon. Cannon also squares a traveling companion named Tamara Rachel Nichols and whose pure blood make her target for the elevator together. They entered adoring and the series of tests and the challenges. You had not to movie like this expectation to the Shakespearean and the dialogue but the acting under the Martin Nichols directed by the consistently lyrics and exciting so that the visual effect from an epic battle with the sand creature to struggle with an ammunition is spanned by it bad guys to give the movie white and the solidity rank to the formidable opponent with the strong physical and the presence Absicon stops with the side of the camp to become a figure of the danger. I try to take each movie I see on the own term. This is not my favorite kind of the entertainment and some of the violence is extreme but on the whole Conan and the Barbarian is pretty good for what it is and the screenplay the Thomas Dean Donnelly Shoyan and the Oppenheimer and the screen hot on this not as part but it was searched on do I am not sure of Jason Momoa has the it takes to become an A-list star but the definitely looks the part of the Conan. Incidentally I have been quoting my favorite line from the film I have love I slay I am content I think I am going to adopt at a new mantra. Film review Conan the Barbarian 2011 Synopsis. The tale of the Conan Cimmerian and his adventure across the continent of the Hyboria on the quest of the average murder of his father and the slaughter of his village. Review. In the spirit of the remark, it's always good when the comes along that really ups the ante of the franchise. I remember clearly that they won Android. Such one's nature brought its version of the Conan to the big screen. It was a pretty cool day for the comic book fans and they ended up by really liking his entire into the Barbarian to watch out and thought the 1982 and the things have changed quite a bit. Our newer generation and the audience are really required to the certain combination of act factor to win them over that the sometime require a remark of that reason alone the old canon was not gone and hold to this new generation of the viewers we so fast forward to 2011 Marcus Nispel is now at the directing helm and Jason Momoa is taking on the formed Barbarian role. San Maria was the never happy. In this 2 hour movie, we get the upgraded version, the violent, the uncompassionate, the era of the barbarian, and the world wars, and much more. Yes, this is not a kid film. This was the apparently died within the first 5 minutes. With little cannon comes back to the carrying the head of his the enemy's cannon required a big dog, dubbed and the strong dude with the look like could be a barbarian. Jason Momoa first the nicely and in my opinion instantly wins over the crowd with his Cimmerian's words. The film is feels closer to book the Robert E. Howard the film book which ravaged the several edition were not about the kindness and the fury tale adventure. They were brutal and hard written about a world that featured women with throw and love it as a magic sorcery and the strange audition and lot of our kingdom that house Dennis from the fantastic world. Conan is a born of the blood rather than milk and the comfortably into the role pretty early on. He has warrior at the heart race on the even greater warrior. He is father Karen Ron Parliament courage buying training the younger ones about the art of the defending themselves through the reality hit at the bending of warrior pace and then what and burnt out the village killing of several from the Cimmerian tribe leading back is the warrior Stephen Lang with a good complex that it is source of the final place into the magic marks of the process. This marks by the real decade life from the gave help helping to him because the ultimately rule he became the name of the Khalar Zym and the quiet competitor even of the Canon's standards. Though the evil comes in a small asses in which the daughter Marique seems to be right and with she lords a bit of the magic herself influenced by the mother sources which was executed at an early age. As we progress into the Conan adventure in the Marquis who has seems to stop in the more diabolic and the violence spectrum and the word by God he thus gets up and does not the tricky than maybe the Wolverine claws tells. Conan develops love and trust in a girl named Tamara Rachel Nozzle who happens to process the pure blood needed to fulfill the marks indication Conan takes to our pretty quickly as well the becomes involved in her quest on the average his father. Now, in all, the Canon film keeps the standard pretty high with delivering a quality added film. Even the women in the several scenes are kept buried the breast at humble, providing service to men. The service is not our store but more relevant to the era of the man and standard of his time. A few thought make of the pretty good warriors with the dividers and the story fights in the warriors class of the female. Marcel Networks and the company have really put the some thought in this production. I felt that they does some work, homework, and took note of that review had to say about the lag film in the past. We get a nest helping the CGI, but not too much. We get a confrontation, and that does not end within a 5 minutes. We get a little taste of the mummy, and but again, too much to see marital for reviews to critics. It all pretty well the thought out and the present and extreme action adventure film. I will say that I would not give away the ending, but it's nice that did not hit all the equals and the could the go in few different direction. But I was glad that chosen one of the ended with up overall canon. The Barbarian is highly entertaining action fantasy adventure that hit it make the Jasmine is the perfect is the canon person of which have to see more of potential sequels. No cameo for the Arnold that okay Arnold belonged to 80s Jason in the Man for 2011.